Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Greensboro Chamber of Commerce's Work at Home Wednesday call. I'm Deborah Hooper, the COO for the Chamber, and it's my pleasure to be your host today. We would love to have you also follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can find us using @GSO Chamber for the latest information. We're also going to continue sending out a post-call communication to our members with a recording of the call and any relevant links. If you're not a member and you're on the call today, welcome. We love having you. Please know that all links to resources and the recordings will be on our website at greensboro.org/COVID-19. Finally, we do have one really important ask of everyone. I know some of you may have heard this before, but I'm going to ask again. If you have not yet, please fill out your 2020 U.S. Census form and encourage others to do the same. We really need to make sure we have a strong completion rate in Guilford County and for North Carolina so that we can get the additional congressional seats and the additional federal funding that we need and deserve based on our growth since the last census back in 2010. I also want to thank our Circle of Champions partners. They support our programming year-round and enable us to bring programming like this to you today. At the Platinum level, we have a Legacy Federal Credit Union, Cone Health, Lincoln Financial Group, Truliant Federal Credit Union, and VF Corporation. At the Gold level, we have Navant Health. At the Silver level, we have Global Brands Group, Kelly Office Solutions, Ralph Lauren, Staunton Capital, and Wake Forest Baptist Health. Today, we have a great work-at-home topic teed up for our guest speaker, Keir Davis, harnessing the power of cloud technology. And I don't think that there would be anyone on this call who would disagree with me when I say that I don't know how we would be doing business as well as we are without cloud technology. And we are so excited that Keir is with us to talk about that. I do want to remind everybody on the call, please, if you have questions, put them in the chat room and he'll be glad to answer them. And let me just tell you a little bit about him. Keir Davis founded Xtern Software back in 2002. And that was at a time when most software development was done offshore. You need to know that Xtern develops all software entirely within the walls of its Fisher Park office here in Greensboro. Their developers are graduates of UNC Greensboro, North Carolina A&T, State University, and other local colleges and universities. And we are so proud and thankful for that, Keir. We appreciate your commitment to Greensboro and to our local colleges and universities. You are definitely proving that tech is thriving in Greensboro. So in addition to custom software, Xtern also creates products. And back in 2016, they launched Haystack CRM. This is a very nimble, intuitive, and transparently priced alternative to other customer relationship management platforms out there. And in fact, it was lauded as a top 10 startup to watch by NC Tech back in 2018, something to be very proud of. This year, they launched Harmony B2B, which is a user-friendly database and content manager that seamlessly integrates with products that any of us may already be using. So that is good to know. Having grown up in Greensboro, Keir, you're a Grimsley-Worley. I'm a Grimsley-Worley parent. You also stress the importance of community stewardship. You've built a database for organizations like Community Housing Solutions to track their work orders. And you're going to be working with Gate City Legal Services to improve their client management data. And over the last 18 years, you've consulted for numerous organizations of all sizes and industry types. And I will say that I think that because you do understand the challenges and opportunities of moving like key pieces of entire infrastructure to the cloud, as more and more companies are shifting to remote operations during this COVID-19 period, we're finding cracks in their processes and systems, and you're able to advise on ways to make those technological shifts as seamless as possible and get companies set up for success during uncertain times like these and certainly well beyond. So welcome today, and we're looking forward to learning more about how all of us can harness the power of cloud technology. So Keir, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, thank you very much. So everyone, my name is Keir Davis. I'm the president of Xtern Software. Like you said, we've been around for quite a number of years, right here in the Triad in Greensboro. We call it home. I'm going to go through this presentation today and talk a little bit about a cloud. I'm going to keep it very high level, but your questions don't have to be high level. So if you have some technical questions or some deeper things, feel free to go ahead and ask those. But I will keep it high level and give you some topics to sort of think about as we go through. So the first thing I want to talk about is sort of where we are right now. So this headline stuck out to me yesterday. A lot of the tech sites that I read and go through are really pushing the fact that everybody's working from home and the cloud is becoming more important than ever. So this headline really stuck out to me yesterday as I was reading through the internet. It said, without cloud computing, businesses would now be in even deeper trouble. The devastating economic impact of COVID-19 would have been even worse if it wasn't for the rise in remote working that's been enabled by an investment in cloud computing. So one thing to kind of keep in mind is this move towards cloud computing is not necessarily new. It's fairly recent, as in probably within the last 10 years or so, but it's not a new thing. And companies have been steadily moving towards the cloud. So a lot of these people have already moved easy pieces of infrastructure, maybe some low-hanging fruit, to the cloud. And then what happened was COVID-19 hit, and all of a sudden, people realized that there were sort of cracks in that. There were gaps that they had missed. So while they kind of thought they were okay, and they had moved most things that they wanted to the cloud if they were so inclined to do that, they realized that once this hit, where people were saying, oh gosh, I just can't get to that, or I can't do this part of my job now. I'm having to work from home. And so there was a mad scramble. And we saw it with a lot of our clients where they may have been systems we weren't working with them, but we were hearing from them saying, hey, so-and-so needs to get this from home and they need to be able to work on this from home, but the only way they can do that is in our office. The biggest place that comes into play is if you still have paper-based processes where somebody prints out an email with an order on it and somebody enters it in and writes some stuff on it and hands it off to shipping for them to take care of. That doesn't work very well when everybody's working from home. So this really kind of is forcing everybody's hand to say, look, we got caught off guard on this one. We were already in the process of moving. But as we go forward, we need to be smarter about this and really look at our processes and see what makes sense to move to the cloud and get it there before this happens again. Because one of the other things that looks like it's going to happen is even after this is over, it's very unlikely to return back to the old ways. So we're a member of the NC Tech organization, and they've been surveying their members on a regular basis to see where things are. And one of the interesting things about this study, and one of the questions they ask is in the aftermath of the COVID-19 situation, do you anticipate that work from home in your organization will either return to the previous mix or become more common, or if you're unsure? And as you can see, the purple shows people saying that it'll become more common. And I think they're right. This is sort of like, you blow up a balloon and let all the air out. It doesn't regain its original shape. We've blown up the balloon with COVID, and even if we lick it and we let all the air out, it's not going to go back to exactly the way it was. And a lot more people are going to find that they either need to work from home, or if the next pandemic hits or next something else hits, they'll need that option. And business will need to be able to go on and work properly. You'll need to be able to do your job. Now, that's not true for everything. There are certain things that have to be in local to where your business is, and we'll talk about that. But as much as possible, people are going to try to move towards the cloud. So, okay, well, what is the cloud? I mean, everybody talks about that. It's thrown around. It's a great buzzword, just put it in the cloud, put it in the cloud. Well, what is it? So at its core, the cloud's really just the internet with servers on it. And these happen to be servers that you don't own. So when you put something on the cloud, you're basically paying somebody who has servers that are on the cloud to run jobs for you, store files, send messages, anything that you might want the cloud, or have done for you in the cloud. So it's really at its core just a bunch of servers that you don't own that you're going to pay somebody to run jobs for you. So it goes hand in hand with the internet itself and a lot of the goals for what the internet were at the beginning, and that was reliability, scalability, and security. So the internet itself is already a collection of servers and a lot of machines that you don't own, and they're all connected by wires or wireless things, and they're meant to be reliable. So the goal of all of this is to be as reliable as electricity. Bill Gates once said, people will trust all this once they can, when the internet is reliable as turning on the switch in your house and the lights coming on, right? It becomes a utility at that point. And we're getting really close to being there. I mean, it took quite a while. Those of us that have been doing this a long time really kind of thought we had that actually probably 20 years ago. And if anybody's around here old enough to remember the big internet boom and bust of the late 90s, early 2000s, they'll realize we were not there. We kind of thought we were, but we weren't. Today, we're much closer to being there. We are 20 years down the road. Things are much more reliable. The security can be a question, but things are undoubtedly more secure than they ever were. And then scalability, we've really kind of licked that one pretty well. The fact that everybody can sit at home and watch a different movie from Netflix is pretty amazing if you think about it. So those were the goals, and that was the goal for sort of the collection of all these servers on the internet and sort of being the cloud. So my little fun fact on this is I like to tell people that in computers, nothing's really new. Everything that we do now was actually invented in the 60s. And it's kind of funny how true it kind of is. So the precursor to the internet was ARPANET, and that was a Department of Defense project. And that was about basically planning for nuclear war. So, I mean, now today we have a pandemic and it's sort of interrupting all of our lives. Back then, they were worried about a nuclear war and what would happen and how would we communicate. So they built this network to be reliable and secure and resilient, so that if any one node was ever hit by a nuclear bomb, the rest of them would still talk. So that's kind of, and the current internet is built that way as well, so that if a part of the internet goes out, you can still communicate through other pieces of it. And the quote unquote cloud, or running jobs on a machine that you don't own, IBM did that for years. They had mainframes, and you could contact IBM and you could have them run your jobs in the 60s and 70s and pay by the minute or by the hour for how long it took to run the job, and then they give you the results back. So it's kind of funny how we're kind of right back to that area. So who's in the cloud? Well, the main providers for the cloud, today I think they even run the TV commercials now. So a lot of people have heard of Amazon Web Services, but if you haven't, they're Amazon Web Services. They are by far the largest cloud provider on the planet. They are different, very different than the Amazon.com, where you go buy your toilet paper and hand sanitizer. Amazon.com is actually a client of Amazon Web Services. So Amazon Web Services runs all of the underlying cloud infrastructure for all of those web services and all of those jobs and emailing and notifications and all that kind of stuff that Amazon.com does. Amazon Web Services provides that. They also provide it for some of the biggest companies on the planet for their infrastructure. I just mentioned Netflix a minute ago. Netflix runs all of their stuff on Amazon Web Services. So, all of you watching those movies and binging on Netflix, that's all being served up by Amazon. They also work with things like the NFL, Major League Baseball. They were a big part of the Mars lander as far as providing services for them. They really are, at this point, the market leader. They have the widest breadth and depth of services of anybody out there. And they have quite a bit of the market share, as you can see. Microsoft has been coming on strong. Every time you count them out, they come back. They've got a cloud platform they call Azure, and it's been around for quite a while, and they're kind of growing pretty fast right now. Amazingly, Google is actually pretty small in the cloud market, even though I bet everybody on this call has a Gmail account that uses the Google Cloud, but Google itself, and as far as the cloud market, is not very big. And the interesting thing to note here is that even with these top 3 players, they only represent a little over 50% of the market. There's actually a whole bunch of other small cloud providers that are out there. Companies, well, they're not small, but companies like Oracle maintain a cloud. Alibaba, if you're familiar with them, they have their own cloud services. And there's a lot of other ones, DreamHost and Rackspace and lots of other ones out there. So there's plenty of capacity out there that if you decide to move to the cloud, you can go. Right now, Amazon's the big leader, but you can kind of go with most any of these and be just fine. When you go to the cloud or start working with the cloud, the big term for what it is you're doing is it's called SaaS. It's the software as a service. And this is where, for example, you log into Gmail. You did not install Gmail on your computer. You didn't have to maintain it or buy it or anything like that. You basically just opened up a website and went in, and it provided a service for you. It shows your mail. It shows it lets you send mail. Today I just saw they're actually allowing you they have a competitor to Zoom now called Google Meet that you can use right there from your Gmail dashboard. So all of those are cloud services that Google provides as a SaaS model. And then one of the other things that people don't typically think of as sort of cloud apps are mobile apps. So when you are using an app on your phone, most of what's going on with that app is not actually on your phone. It's actually running on a cloud server somewhere off on the internet. The phone is just simply showing you the results and the data and the information that you wanted to see. Everything else is just running on the cloud. So I already talked about some of the examples. I talked about Gmail. So here are some other sort of cloud product examples. And of course, these are geared towards business. So for your email, you've got Gmail and Office 365 are two of the biggest cloud email. I remember back in the day when most all companies ran email in-house and tried to maintain it, but that over time has really kind of gone away. Most companies use cloud-based email now through either Gmail's G Suite or from Microsoft's Office 365. There are other alternatives. Those are just two of the biggest that I mentioned there. Document management. So again, 5-10 years ago, everybody had a file server sitting in their computer, in their computer room, in their office. And so all the people in your company would drop files on this file server, and everybody'd have a folder, and they'd keep track of their Word documents and their Excel spreadsheets and PDFs and all that kind of stuff. Well, a lot of this has moved into the cloud as well and is available to you. So things like Google's G Suite for document management, along with Google Drive. You've got things like Office 365 with OneDrive, Dropbox. A lot of people use Dropbox these days. That's kind of your file server in the cloud, where you can put files and collaborate with people. Straight up collaboration, so talking, things like Slack and MS Teams. This allows you to be in touch with people on your team in what are called rooms or channels that are dedicated to topics. So for example, in my company, we have different channels. We use a thing called Rocket Chat, and we have different channels based on the projects we're working on so that people can keep in touch and talk about the projects that they're working on at the time. Being in software, we've been using that for years, and we'll actually, believe it or not, chat with somebody that way who's in an office right next door to them. But now it's become even more important because we're not. Everybody's working from home, and so that's how we keep in touch throughout the day quickly. Accounting software. If you have a business, you have to have accounting software. By far, for small to medium-sized businesses, QuickBooks is the leader. We ran QuickBooks here for a number of years on a little server, and you kept it running and backed it up and did all your things. But in order to use it, you had to be in the office. So, transitioning to some of the newer products like QuickBooks Online, there's another alternative that's really good out there called Xero, which is pure online SaaS accounting. That allows you to access your accounting system from anywhere. You can do it from home. You can pay bills. You could print checks. You can balance your checkbook. You can send invoices. All the different things that you would normally have had to go into the office because that's where the server was with QuickBooks. You can do now from anywhere you need to. And for the larger size companies, you move into things like Salesforce and NetSuite. Both of those were what was called cloud first. They were built as a software as a service or SaaS product from the very beginning, and they touted that. Salesforce was 100% online. NetSuite was as well. Neither one of them was ever had an option for you to install locally and run on your local network.
So Keir, I'm going to just hit the pause button for a second because I wanted to ask you, especially because we're all working remotely from home.
Yeah.
If we were looking at a collaboration tool or realizing, hey, we need a collaboration tool, how do you go about deciding which one's best for your company?
Well, there's a lot of them out there. They all have very similar feature sets. Most of them are set up like chat with different rooms. So Microsoft Teams is that way. Amazon has a product called Chime. There's also Slack, and there's one we use called Rocket Chat. Now, they all have varying degrees of integration with things like cameras and stuff like that. But if it's more for I want to send a message out to the people that are in my room that want to talk, and I'm not, it's not maybe not time sensitive, but I want to get the answer back at some point. So I'm not going to pick up the phone and call them. Any of those systems work really well for that. They have varying price points. Slack is actually kind of expensive. If you already have an Office 365 subscription, MS Teams is included. So you might look at MS Teams. They all have, now Rocket Chat you have to run on your own. So that'd be for a more advanced user. You'd have to set up your own cloud server and run it. But they all have, what's great about them is they all have mobile apps. They all have web consoles, and they all have desktop applications. So you can be communicating with your team no matter where you are, whether you're on the go or not. So they're all really good. You might start with something, especially, there's many people that have Office 365 these days. Try out MS Teams and Microsoft Teams and see what you like. They have full video conferencing with it. They've got chat with it. They've got you can drag and drop files in there so you can share files with each other. I will say one of the downsides to some of these things is permanence. So if you're collaborating with somebody and you want sort of that permanent audit trail, if you will, you might want to stick with something like email. If it's just to kind of throw ideas and bounce things back and forth with somebody, then one of these collaboration tools is a better fit for that.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. Let's see. Okay, so we talked about Salesforce and NetSuite. Those are bigger company things there. So, and of course, if you're on something like SAP or InfoLN, like Infor has a product called Cloud Suite. So some of these larger companies, Oracle, they all have a varying degree of sort of hosted or online options available for your business systems. So we talked, is the cloud right for you? Well, the answer is yes. The real question is about what degree do you want to be in on the cloud, okay? So the question is always the balance between on-prem, which is on-premise, or cloud, so on the internet cloud-wise. And it depends on your company size, your goals, the types of things that you need, whether or not where your balance is going to be struck, okay? So for smaller companies that are typically, now believe it or not, most small companies are kind of already all in the cloud. If you're using QuickBooks Online and you're working with Slack and you've got like Office 365 for your documents, or you're using G Suite for your document management, you're kind of already all in on the cloud. You're there. If you are still running QuickBooks locally, that's definitely something to look at, moving to something that's online. If you're a medium or large company, you're generally going to be running a hybrid solution. And the reason is going to be you're going to have a lot of legacy to work with. You're going to have a lot of specialized applications, custom applications, things like that, that won't necessarily just all of a sudden be in the cloud, okay? So one of the things you have to talk about is does the application that you're running need local access? So let's say you've got some kind of a manufacturing operation and you've got machinery that you've got programmed. Well, you know, that's not really a candidate probably for the cloud. The timing needs to be good. The access to the machine needs to be constant. So if you're stamping out metal or leather or something like that, and you've got a machine that does it, you know, part of your application for managing that will need to be close to the machine. It'll need to be right there. However, you might also take the data from that machine. You know, how many stamps did it do in an hour? How many rejects were there? How many acceptance were there? You know, how many times did they have to retool the machine? All of that type of data, that can all be forwarded to the cloud so that somebody else can take a look at that data from anywhere they happen to be and analyze it and look at it and work with it. So there you go. You might have this hybrid situation going on. Security is also a big deal. You know, if you're an FDA certified company or medical device company, you are any of these type, your government contractor, that kind of thing, you do need to really pay attention to security. Now, the clouds are very good as far as security goes. I mean, the Department of Defense and the government of the United States does operate in Amazon's cloud. They also work with Microsoft's Azure. So they are deemed to be safe for fairly sensitive things. I mean, obviously they are already certified for things like HIPAA and for PCI compliance for credit cards and things like that. But even if you had another layer and much deeper requirement for security, these clouds can provide that. It's just a matter, again, it gets back to a matter of what level of security you need. So how much of it can you put in the cloud versus how much of it you still need to keep local. So using the cloud, so this is where you sort of talk about, well, should I use an off-the-shelf solution like NetSuite or Salesforce or one of these other like Office 365 or any of these kind of off-the-shelf solutions, or do I need to do a custom solution, right? So this would be something like if you've got something internal. So for well-known and well-trodden solutions, things like email, accounting, those type of things have been around a long time. There are really good off-the-shelf cloud solutions for a lot of those things. And even things like document management, things like Office 365 and G Suite for spreadsheets and presentations and Word documents and things like that. Those are very good. They're very economical. They're easy to use. They'll be there. So once you get into this, though, you have to realize that you are going to be paying for this over and over again. So back to the QuickBooks example. Let's say you're a QuickBooks user, right? You bought your license from wherever, Office Depot or Amazon or wherever, and you bought your copy of QuickBooks and you loaded it up. Great. Okay, I don't have to pay them any more money. Well, the reason you're not paying them any more money is because you need to host it locally. You have to maintain a server. You have to keep updates and all that kind of stuff. If you move to something like QuickBooks Online, it's going to be a monthly fee. You'll have to pay for it every month. Now, the upside to that is that you won't have to maintain the server. You won't have to do the backups. You'll always be on the latest version, and you always have access to support. I don't know if any of you are, QuickBooks is sort of one that I like to pick on because I used it for so many years. But the interesting thing about them is even if you do buy it, they make you buy it again every couple of years because they just sort of stop supporting the version that you're on, and all of your bank connections go away. So it's almost easier just to go ahead and say, look, I'm going to just pay you $20 a month or whatever it is. I'm going to be guaranteed that it's always going to be backed up. It's always going to be available for me, and I'm always going to be in the latest version, and it won't ever turn off. So those are some things to sort of keep in mind when you talk about off-the-shelf solutions for the cloud. Now, let's say you can't use an off-the-shelf solution. Let's say you've got this Access database that an intern developed for you 10 years ago, and it does your project management, or it does your quoting, or something of that nature. Moving that to the cloud is really not going to be an option. You're going to need to leave it locally or have it on a copy of it on your computer, which makes it hard to collaborate and that kind of thing. At that point, you might want to look at transitioning into something that is cloud-based, redeveloping that quote system or redeveloping that project management system as a cloud-based application, so that it's out there, it's always available, it's backed up, it's kept up to date, and it's more importantly able to be accessed from anywhere by any number of people at a given time. So that can really be helpful. Deborah mentioned the community housing solutions project we did, and that was the project we did for them. That was taking an older project that was done in Access and moving it to the cloud so that it could be used by their people at any point. We got lucky because we did it before the COVID-19 hit, and it became just a happenstance that they were already on the new system when COVID-19 hit, and it really became a good benefit for them. The one thing people they're like, oh, a custom solution, that's going to be really expensive. Well, yes, it can be. The upfront cost on a custom solution would certainly be more than signing up for a subscription on one of the cloud services. However, the long-term cost a lot of times will turn out to be very negligible in difference. Because while you will have a higher upfront cost, you'll have less of a long-term cost, and you'll have exactly what you want. Sometimes when you do a custom solution, you can put in the functionality that replaces 2 or 3 or maybe 4 cloud solutions that you're trying to put together and merge and work as one. So a custom solution is not always more expensive. Plus, you get exactly what you want. And those are the slides that I had. I'm hoping that you all have some questions. That hopefully some of these topics brought up some things that you'd like to hear more about, a little more in depth, or just ask me anything cloud related.
Yeah. So, Keir, I do want to go back to security, feeling good about the security of data in the cloud.
Absolutely.
So many companies do capture information that is very sensitive, whether it is credit card information from their customers. Let's just use that as an example. And then we all hear about these security breaches, right? And then
yes,
what you have to do after that. So do we need to be concerned about the security of the data we're putting in the cloud? I mean, can you talk a little bit more about that and how we protect ourselves?
Absolutely. So security is very top of mind for all of the cloud providers. They all offer very secure configurations out of the box for their systems. And they also make it, I just attended the last Amazon web conference. We're actually a partner of theirs. I went to their web conference back when you could travel, back last fall. And what they've done is they've made it so that there's no reason not to encrypt everything and secure everything. There's no penalty. There's no performance penalty. There's no usability penalty. And all of these cloud providers have moved towards that. So securing data in the cloud it's pretty much secure by default, and there's no reason not to. But I want to address one thing you brought up, and that was credit cards. Now,
Okay.
credit cards, because we also deal with those a lot too for our clients. So there are also cloud-based credit card processors. And if you are dealing with credit cards in your business, you better be using one of them, okay? These are companies so on the lower end for most smaller businesses, these are companies like Square or Stripe, okay? Those type companies where you can run credit cards through their system, okay? If you're on a bigger size company where you have a lot more transactions, you will use what's called an internet gateway, somebody like Authorize.net, for example. And what you do is while you may take the credit card, you're going to pass it right off to them and let them store it for you. And then you use it from there where you don't have the card number anymore.
Okay.
Because they spend, lots and lots of money, and they spend all their time doing nothing but safeguarding those credit cards. And so it's much better for you to hand it off to them than for you to try to do it yourself. So yeah, Please don't store credit cards and Word documents on the cloud.
Okay. So a question in the chat room from Luann, is there a best tool that's integrated, that integrates everything so you don't have to manage so many different tools and software packages?
Well, I guess it depends on which tools or packages you're looking at. I mean, from a document management standpoint, Office 365 and G Suite are fairly well integrated so that you can sort of put them all together and they work well together.
Okay.
If you are, back to my point about custom software, if you're talking about something where, yeah, you're having to use 3 or 4 different cloud services in order to kind of get this project flow done for maybe a project management or a quoting system, then you might want to look at doing something that's custom.
Okay.
Okay?
Can I
Because
want to ask,
go ahead.
I do want to ask you a question about a
Yeah,
customized solution.
sure.
Let's say that you have a company actually develop a customized solution for you, but for whatever reason, it's a year or 2 down the road and they're not available anymore for whatever reason to make
Mhm.
adjustments in that customized solution. What do you do then?
Okay, so here's how you handle working with custom software developers.
Okay.
You make sure that when you have custom software developed, that you have access to the source code. Okay.
Okay.
And if you don't explicitly ask for that, you will not get it. Okay. One
Mm-hmm.
of the issues that people run into all the time, and we see it time and time again when people come to us, is they say, I had this person and I had this company, they developed this big quoting system for us to build whatever. And we don't want to use them anymore. It's been really bad. They haven't done a good job and they're not being responsive. And so we asked for the source code and they said no. How can they do that? Well, they can. Um, when someone develops software for you, unless they give up the copyright or the rights to that code to you, they own it. It's the right of creation. So always make sure that you have the ability to get at the source code for a product that was developed for you. We do that with all of our clients. We always give them source code if they want to have it. And then you can take that source code and go to another developer and work with it. Now, I will say it's a little trickier when you start talking about a cloud solution because there's not only code, but there's infrastructure. So, if you had somebody build something for you on the Amazon cloud, for example, you're going to want to probably find somebody else who can also take your code and put it on the Amazon cloud for you because they're likely to have used certain infrastructure pieces that you're going to want to maintain. But always, always, always ask for the right to have the source code when you get something developed for you.
That sounds like a best practice tip of those upfront negotiations.
Right. People are usually afraid to ask, or they assume that, well, I paid for it. It's my code. It's not, according to intellectual property law. Now, here's where it does get a little bit tricky, and I don't want to belabor the point too far. One of the way we do our source code agreements is we give, whenever we write something, we give that customer the ability to have the source code and a lifetime fully licensed up version of that code. They can do whatever they want with it and they can take it off. However, they do not obtain exclusive ownership of the intellectual property. And the reason is when we develop software, we do it a lot and we have a lot of libraries and things that we've built and we use those in your code. And that's how we can do it efficiently and more correctly so that things will work right the first time. And so we can't give up the rights to those, but we give you the ability to have it and use it as you wish going forward. So
Okay.
they may not give you the actual intellectual property rights, but as long as you have the right to use the source code and have a copy of it and do with it as you wish, you'll be fine.
Okay. Well, I know, up front, we talked about that businesses are probably discovering some cracks in their systems and processes for being able to work remotely. So let's say that a business says, wow, this platform just isn't serving me as well anymore as I need for it to. How would they get, as an example, how would they get their data transferred from an old platform that they're currently using to a new platform that they want to move to?
Well, it sort of depends on that, but if you are working with a developer or working with a system like, let's say you have something that's in-house that's maybe is like, we have this in-house CRM that we built, and we're going to move to something like a Salesforce or maybe our product, Haystack. So there are ways to export information from your old system and import it into something in the cloud. They all have the ability to do that, to import data. Nobody expects you to start up day one on as a brand new, I've never used this before and I'm going to start today. Everybody has data these days that they need to bring along. So you can do that. If it's a custom solution, then the people you work with, or the company you work with, or the person you work with should, as part of their implementation plan, talk with you about data migration and how to move it. If it's something like documents, like Word documents, Excel, PowerPoint, those are very easy. You just put them in your OneDrive or put them in your Google Drive or Google Sheets or whatever, and they'll already be imported. They'll be ready to go.
So for businesses with their teams working from home right now, and as you pointed out, likely to continue some level of working remotely from home as we go forward, right, in the future.
Yeah.
How do we make sure that our teams have access to everything they need?
Well, there's generally going to be a multi-pronged solution to that. So if you are working from home and you've got a medium to large size company, one that's probably going to have resources that are on the network in the office to which you are not in at that moment, you're at home. There are remote ways to connect to your computers there. There are things like VPNs, virtual private network. There are also things like log me in and screen sharing type application, so that you can actually get to those resources and things that are there. The goal would be to take as many of those things that are bound to your local network and move them into the cloud in some way, whether it be a Google Drive or a Dropbox or G Suite or Office 365 or one of those things, and remove the amount of data that is confined to the four walls of your office. People, all of a sudden now are realizing, oh my gosh, I don't have access to that file server and I've got my proposals on there. How do I get to them? Well, now's the time to start looking at moving those to somewhere that's more readily accessible from outside of the system.
So that may be one of those first projects that, as we, phase back in, returning to our physical office, at the top of the list to say, okay, we need to make sure that we get this done. Just in case, and like you said, that something else happens and we need to all go back to working remotely from home, at least we've taken care of that so that things can work better than they have while we've gone through this first experience, if you will, with this pandemic. So
I would expect something like this to happen again, and go ahead and plan for it. Is it part of any of your risk assessment as a business owner?
Sounds good. How do we make sure that all of our systems are integrated? Any additional thoughts on that?
Well, that really just requires, now it's kind of nice because nice, I don't want to say it that way, but as people are working from home, things are becoming very clear where there are gaps in integration, right? Where you worked in this system over here, but then you actually printed something out and handed it to somebody 2 doors down for them to then take and put into their system and do whatever they're going to do with it. And now that you can't walk down the hall and hand that piece of paper, something's wrong, right? I can't get it to them.
Right.
I'm not being facetious. We have large companies that found that out about a month ago, where they said, oh my gosh, I used to print this out and write on it and hand it to Mary in order entry, and I can't do that anymore. We're not integrated. So looking at those type of gaps, taking special note of what's going on right now, where the pain points are, because you're having to go in here, go in there, and you can't walk down the hall and talk to somebody about it or hand them something. How do we get it there? How do we integrate those into one system so that I can do it all electronically? And believe it or not, that document management or passing, in a typical business, right? You take in the order, you fulfill the order, then you invoice the order. Making sure that can all be done in one system electronically is very important now.
Yeah. So, Keir, I just want to ask you, what have you all learned about your own company through this COVID period?
Well, see, I've been thinking about that, because we're all software developers, most of us. We're all sort of really attuned to being in front of a computer and doing things. I mentioned earlier how we will chat with somebody who's in the next room instead of going over there and talking to them. But you know what? What I've sort of found is that we really kind of need each other physically present. And I'm kind of looking forward to the day that we can do that again. I don't know about everybody else, but to me, I kind of feel like everybody's treading water right now a little bit. You know,
Mhm.
you're not exactly sure what's happening. You're still working. We're still busy. We're still doing everything every day. But that
Right.
overall like move towards progress isn't really happening. So while what I have found is that functionally we can operate just fine. We're all computers. We're all working with computers. We're all doing things that are computer related. But it's the intangibles. It's the serendipitous type thing, serendipity things like overhearing somebody talking about a new technology in the hall, or jumping in and talking about something new that you saw or something else that you tried. You don't get that when everybody's remote.
I totally understand what you mean. That's an excellent point. And um, we cannot thank you enough for sharing your expertise today with all of us. This has been so helpful. You've given us a lot to think about, um, and also new things that we've learned today about the cloud and the different um, applications and how we harness this technology and use it to benefit our companies to help move us forward. So we thank you and
Really,
your team at Xtern Software for being willing to step forward and share this expertise today. Um, I just want to let everybody know that Keir's slides are going to be made available in our post-call communication. And tomorrow, please join us tomorrow at 3 o'clock for Think Ahead Thursday with Luann Flanders-Steck, our Executive Vice President of Entrepreneurship for Launch Greensboro. So again, as we begin to think about, going back to work, there are a lot of considerations, right? OSHA and Department of Labor are issuing guidelines that are intended to keep our employees safe. Sean Straub, who's the founder of Alt HR Partners, is going to be joining Luann to help inform all of us about those guidelines and what we need to be doing to comply starting now. So please join us tomorrow. And I want to thank everyone for joining us this afternoon, and have a great rest of your day.